I just had the most insane experience, and honestly, I still can't believe it happened. I don't know if I'm overreacting or if it was really as messed up as it felt in the moment. I just moved to Dallas a few weeks ago for work. I'm still getting used to the city, and definitely don't know all the routes yet. My job has me driving around a lot, meeting clients, checking out properties. I'm in real estate. So I've been relying on Google Maps like it's my lifeline. Yesterday was one of those days where everything was running late. I had a meeting that went way over time, and before I knew it, it was pitch black outside. I had to drive back home from this part of town I'd never been to before, some suburban area. I think it's called Cedar Hill. I wasn't familiar with the area at all, and I was already exhausted from the day. Anyway, I plug my address into Google Maps and start driving. I'm just trying to get home, but of course there's construction everywhere, and Maps keeps recalculating my route. At one point, it tells me to take a left turn onto this random road that doesn't even look like a road. But I'm like, whatever, it's probably just a shortcut, and I follow it. Big mistake. The street's barely lit, like the only light source is my car's headlights, and there's nothing but trees on either side. I'm talking thick, dark woods. The road itself is narrow and in bad shape. Potholes everywhere. I'm starting to get a bad feeling, but at this point, I'm too far in to turn around. Plus, Google Maps hasn't led me astray before, so I'm like, okay, just keep going. After a few minutes, the road starts getting even worse. It's turning into more of a dirt path, and I'm thinking, this can't be right. I glance at the map, and it's still telling me to go straight for another 2 miles. 2 miles doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're crawling at 15 miles per hour on a sketchy-ass road, it feels like an eternity. As I'm driving, I notice something weird. There's this old pickup truck behind me, and it's been tailing me for a while. At first, I didn't think much of it. People live out here, right? But then I realized the truck's following me way too close, like dangerously close. I started to panic, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. I don't want to pull over and stop, but there's no way to speed up without wrecking my car on this crappy road. So I do the only thing I can think of. I keep driving. I'm white-knuckling the steering wheel at this point, just praying this road will end soon and lead me back to civilization. The pickup truck's headlights are blinding in my rearview mirror, and every time I look back, it seems like it's getting closer. Then, out of nowhere, the road splits into 2 directions, and Google Maps just loses its mind. It's recalculating again, telling me to take a U-turn, then rerouting me in circles. I'm panicking, trying to decide which way to go, when I see something up ahead on the right. There's a small house with a single light on the porch. The place looks abandoned, but I figure it might be safer than staying on the road with this maniac behind me. So, I make a split-second decision and turn onto the driveway. The truck follows me. I pull up to the house and stop, leaving the engine running. The truck stops too, a few feet behind me. I'm sweating like crazy. I don't know what to do. Do I stay in the car? Do I get out and knock on the door? Is this even a good idea? Before I can decide, the truck's door opens and a guy gets out. He's tall and looks like he hasn't showered in days. He starts walking towards my car, and my brain's screaming at me to just drive away, but my body's frozen. He stops right at my driver's side window and taps on the glass. I crack the window just a bit, enough to talk, but not enough for him to reach in. "Can I help you?" I ask, trying to keep my voice steady. The guy leans in closer, and in the dim light, I can see his face clearly. "You lost?" he asks. "Yeah," I lied, or maybe not. "I'm just trying to get back to the main road." He grins, but it's not a friendly grin. "This ain't a road you want to be on," he says. "Not at this time of night." Now I'm freaking out internally, but I try to keep it cool. "Can you tell me how to get back to town?" He doesn't answer right away. Instead, he just stares at me for what feels like forever. Then, he finally says, "I'll show you the way." At this point, every instinct in my body is telling me not to trust this guy, but I don't see any other option. I nod, and he walks back to his truck. He gets in, starts it up, and pulls around to lead the way. I follow him, but every nerve in my body is on high alert. The road keeps getting narrower, the trees denser, and I'm questioning my life choices. After what feels like an eternity, we reach another fork in the road. He signals to the left, and I do the same. But then, something happens that I'll never forget. As soon as we make the turn, his truck speeds up, way faster than the road conditions allow. I try to keep up, but my car can't handle the bumps and holes at that speed. Suddenly, his taillights vanish into the darkness. I'm alone on this godforsaken road, and my GPS is still useless. Panic sets in, and I'm about to turn around when I notice something in the rearview mirror. There's another set of headlights coming up fast. Another car maybe, or the same truck? I can't tell, but I'm not sticking around to find out. I floor it, trying to get away, but the road's too rough. My car's bouncing all over the place, and I'm praying I don't blow a tire. I glance back and the headlights are closer now, way too close. Suddenly the road curves sharply, and I barely manage to stay on it. The headlights behind me don't make the turn. Instead, they go straight off the road and disappear. There's a loud crash, and then silence. I don't stop to check. I just keep driving until, finally, I see lights up ahead. Real streetlights. I nearly cried from relief as I pull onto a paved road back into civilization. When I get home, I collapse onto the couch, shaking. I don't know who that guy was, what his intentions were, or what happened to him after he went off the road. But I'm never trusting Google Maps for a shortcut again. I'm not usually one to get creeped out on night drives. I'm the kind of person who actually enjoys the quiet, the empty roads, and the chill vibes of driving through the dark while my playlist shuffles through some beats. I live in this small town in upstate New York, about an hour north of Albany. My girlfriend was staying with me for the weekend, but she got called into work last minute. She works as a nurse in Poughkeepsie, which is a good 2-hour drive south. We figured we'd hang out until late, and then I'd drop her off at work, since her shift started at 4 a.m. It was just past midnight when we hopped in my car. We decided to take Route 9 because it's usually empty at that time of night. Plus, it's a pretty scenic route, with forests on either side and occasional glimpses of the Hudson River. Anyway, we're driving along, talking about random stuff, when my girlfriend suddenly mentioned something weird she heard from one of her coworkers. Apparently there's a Route 9 that's supposedly haunted. Like, people have seen things. Figures on the road, headlights appearing out of nowhere, that sort of thing. I called BS on that, saying that it's probably just stories people tell to scare others. Look, I'm not saying it's real, but weird things do happen on this road. Just keep an eye out, okay? She said. About an hour into the drive, things started to get strange. We were in this particularly dark part of the road, where the trees seemed to close in on either side, making it feel like we were driving through a tunnel. Out of nowhere, my headlights caught something on the side of the road, something standing just at the edge of the trees. It was just for a split second, but I swear I saw it. She must have seen it too, because she grabbed my arm. "Did you see that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded. "Yeah." But it was probably just some random person, right? I tried to convince myself that it was nothing. Who the hell would be standing out here in the middle of nowhere at that time? We kept driving, both of us now on edge, when it happened again. This time the figure was closer to the road, almost as if it had moved in the time it took us to drive past. I slammed on the brakes, and we both sat there in stunned silence, staring out into the darkness. "What the hell was that?" I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. My GF was shaking her head, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here." I didn't need any more convincing. I hit the gas, but it wasn't over. As we rounded a bend, the headlights illuminated something in the middle of the road. A car. It was a sedan, just sitting there, blocking both lanes. There were no lights on, no sign of anyone inside. "Should I stop?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My GF shook her head frantically. "No, just go around it. Don't stop." I swerved to the left, narrowly avoiding the car as we sped past. We drove in silence for a few more miles, our nerves frayed, before my GF finally spoke up. "I think we're being followed." I glanced in the mirror again, and sure enough, there were headlights in the distance. Just 2 pinpricks of light, getting closer and closer. "Maybe it's just another car." But the look on her face told me she didn't believe it, and neither did I. The road had been deserted for the past hour, and now, all of a sudden, there was a car behind us? Something wasn't right. The headlights kept getting closer, but No matter how fast I drove, they stayed at the same distance behind us. It was like they were toying with us, keeping just out of reach. "Take the next exit," she urged. "We need to get off this road." I nodded and took the exit for a small town I'd never heard of before. The road was narrow and winding, leading us deeper into the woods. The headlights followed us, turning when we turned, never falling behind. We finally spotted a gas station up ahead, the only sign of civilization we'd seen for miles. The lights were on, and there were a couple of cars parked out front. It was far from ideal, but it was better than being out on the road with whoever or whatever was following us. I pulled into the gas station and parked near the entrance, keeping the engine running. My GF and I both watched as the headlights approached. But instead of pulling into the gas station, the car drove right past, its headlights disappearing into the distance. We ended up staying at the gas station until dawn, sipping bad coffee and trying to make sense of what had just happened. Eventually, we got back on the road, the morning light chasing away the shadows of the night. We made it to Poughkeepsie without any more incidents, but neither of us could shake the feeling that we had narrowly escaped something wrong. To this day, I don't know what we saw or who was following us. I've driven Route 9 plenty of times since then, but I always avoid that part of road at night. Maybe it was just a coincidence, maybe it was something more, but whatever it was, I'm not eager to find out. That's my story. I know it sounds wild, but I swear it happened exactly like that. Has anyone else had a weird experience on Route 9? Or am I just losing it? I do a lot of late-night drives. It's kind of my thing. Throw on some lo-fi beats, grab a coffee, and just cruise to clear my head. Living in Seattle, the nighttime vibes are pretty relaxing, and the roads are pretty empty once you get out of the city. Anyway, on this particular night, I decided to take a drive down to Portland. It's like a 3-hour drive, and I had some podcasts queued up, so why not? I left around 11 p.m., expecting to get there in the early hours, sleep at a buddy's place, and head back the next day. The first hour or so was normal. Just me, my coffee, and the open road. The I-5 was quiet, and the weather was that perfect mix of cool and crisp. I was vibing. About halfway through, maybe around Centralia, I noticed this old truck ahead of me, going way under the speed limit. Like, we're talking 40 and a 60. I figured maybe they were having car trouble or something, so I switched lanes to pass them. As I drove by, I took a quick glance over, and the driver looked off. It was this guy, probably mid-30s, pale as a ghost, eyes wide like he'd seen some shit. But hey, we've all had rough nights, so I didn't think much of it and kept going. Here's where things start getting weird. Maybe 10 minutes later, I see headlights approaching fast in my rear view. Like, really fast. It's the same truck, and dude is tailgating me hard. I'm talking like dangerously close. I'm already going a good 5 over the limit, so I give a little tap on the brakes to signal back off, but he doesn't. Instead, he starts flashing his high beams at me. At this point, I'm thinking, what the actual hell? Maybe I cut him off earlier without realizing? I decide to switch lanes again to let him pass. He speeds up, gets parallel to me, and then matches my speed. I try not to look over, but out of the corner of my eye, I can see he's waving his arms, trying to get my attention. Against my better judgment, I glance over. He's mouthing something, but I can't make it out. I roll down my passenger window slightly, keeping my doors locked because safety first. And I hear him yell, "Pull over! Please!" My brain is screaming, "Nope!" But there's something genuinely desperate in his voice. I hesitate for a moment, and he keeps pleading, "Please, I need help! It's an emergency!" I slow down a bit, still unsure, but then I spot a well-lit gas station sign a mile ahead. I signal to him that I'll pull over there, and he nods frantically. We both pull into the Chevron station that's miraculously open at like 1 a.m. There's an older guy behind the counter inside and a couple of trucks parked on the side, so I feel a bit safer. I step out of my car, keeping a good distance, and the guy from the truck stumbles out, shaking. Up close, he looks even worse. Worn-out clothes, sweat pouring down his face, eyes bloodshot. He rushes over but stops a few feet away, probably sensing my apprehension. "I'm so sorry to scare you," he says, voice trembling, "but I didn't know what else to do." I'm like, "Dude, what's going on? Are you okay?" He takes a deep breath and says, "I think someone's been following me for the last hour, but every time I try to get someone else's attention, they disappear. But as soon as I'm alone again, they're back. Okay, so now I'm thinking this guy's either high, paranoid, or something legit is going down. I ask him, "Did you see who it was? What kind of car?" He shakes his head. "It's not like that. I first noticed it when I left Olympia. There's this, I don't even know how to explain it. This dark figure that keeps appearing in my backseat mirror. At first I thought I was just tired, but then it started whispering things. I could hear it, clear as day. All right, so at this point, I'm internally rolling my eyes, thinking I've got a real-life creepypasta on my hands. But the dude looks genuinely terrified. Tears are welling up, and his hands are shaking uncontrollably. I try to keep it rational. "Maybe you're just exhausted, man. Been driving long?" He nods. "Yeah, drove up from Salem earlier today for work, and I'm heading back now. But I swear, I'm not imagining this. I even stopped back there and tried to look, but there's nothing, and then it comes back." I'm torn between wanting to help and wanting to get the hell out of there. The gas station clerk is watching us now, probably sensing some drama. I suggest, how about we go inside, grab some water, take a break, maybe call someone? He agrees, so we head inside. The clerk asks if everything's all right. I let the truck guy explain, and as he recounts the story, he gets more and more agitated, talking about the whispers getting louder and the figure getting closer. The clerk listens quietly and then says, "You're not the first person to say something like that around these parts." Both truck guy and I look at him surprised. I ask, "What do you mean?" The clerk leans in a bit, lowering his voice. "Couple months back, had a lady stop by around the same time of night, saying she saw a person or something else following her on the road between Olympia and here. Thought she was losing her mind. A few weeks later, a trucker mentioned hearing voices while driving through. I thought they were all just tired or messing with me, but now you..." Truck guy looks like he's about to pass out. I, on the other hand, am getting a serious case of the creeps. The clerk continues, "There's been stories for years about that road. Some old legend about a hitchhiker who died there decades ago, now haunting drivers at night. But, just BS stories." Great. Just what I needed. A ghost story in the middle of the night. Truck guy is visibly shaken. He mutters, "I can't keep driving like this. I feel like I'm losing my mind." I feel bad for him. Regardless of whether this is real or just in his head, he's clearly in stress. I suggest, maybe you should rest here for a bit. There's a motel not too far from here. Get some sleep and drive in the morning. He nods slowly, considering it. The clerk chimes in, "Yeah, there's an inn is just down the road. Not the fanciest place, but it'll do for a night." Truck guy agrees, thanks both of us, and after buying a bottle of water, heads back to his car. I watch as he drives off towards the motel, hoping he'll be okay. I stick around the gas station for a little longer, chatting with the clerk about random stuff, partly to shake off the weirdness and partly because I suddenly don't feel like being alone on the road. After about 20 minutes, I decide to get back on my way. I thank the clerk and head out. As I'm getting into my car, I can't help but check my back seat, just in case. All clear. I laugh at myself for being spooked, but better safe than sorry, right? The rest of the drive is smooth every now and then. I find myself glancing at my mirrors more than usual, expecting to see something that shouldn't be there. Thankfully, nothing happens, and I reach my friend's place in Portland without further incident. The next day, out of curiosity, I try to look up any accidents or legends about that stretch of I-5. Surprisingly, there's quite a few mentions on old forums and sites about strange sightings and experiences between Olympia and Centralia. That's my weird night drive story. I still don't know what to make of it. Part of me thinks the guy was just sleep-deprived and imagining things. But with all the other stories out there, who knows? I never really thought night drives were creepy. Honestly, I always found them kind of peaceful, especially after a long day. There's something about the empty roads, the cool air, and just being alone with your thoughts. It all started last Saturday. I was visiting my parents in Cherry Hill, New Jersey for the weekend. It's a pretty suburban area, nothing too exciting. But after dinner, I decided to head back to my apartment in Philly. It was getting late, around 10:30 p.m., but I didn't feel like staying the night. I'd had a long week at work, and I just wanted to crash in my own bed. The drive from Cherry Hill to Philly is usually about 30 minutes, give or take, depending on traffic. That night, there wasn't any. The roads were practically deserted, which wasn't surprising. Most people are either home by that time or out partying, and I was neither. I took my usual route, I-295 north to Route 70 west, then onto I-676 into the city. I'm just cruising along with my music playing low. The streets were well lit, but the further I got from Cherry Hill, the darker it became. It wasn't pitch black or anything, just dim. You know how it is on those parts of highway where the lights are spread out too far? That's what it was like. I was about halfway there when I noticed something weird. I was on Route 70, near the outskirts of Marlton, when I saw this car in my rearview mirror. At first, it was just a pair of headlights in the distance, nothing unusual. But then, the lights started getting closer. Fast. I figured it was some dude speeding, trying to get somewhere in a hurry. But when they got right up behind me, they didn't pass. They just stayed there, tailgating me. I couldn't see the driver's face, just the headlights glaring in my mirror. I hate tailgaters. Like, what's the point? Just pass me if you're in such a rush. But this car didn't. I tapped my brakes lightly, just to signal them to back off, but they didn't. They just stayed on my tail, following me for what felt like forever. At this point, I was getting pissed. I sped up a little, hoping they'd either pass me or back off, but they just matched my speed. It was almost like they were playing a game with me. I tried to shake them by changing lanes, but they followed every move I made. It was like they were glued to my bumper. This was starting to get under my skin. I turned down my music, trying to focus on the road and figure out what the hell was going on. There weren't any other cars around, just me and this asshole playing cat and mouse on a nearly empty highway. I decided to take the next exit, hoping to lose them. I pulled off onto a smaller road that led into a more rural area, thinking they'd keep going straight, but they followed me. I started to panic a little. I was in the middle of nowhere, no streetlights, just dark, winding roads surrounded by trees. I checked my phone, but I didn't have any service. Of course, just my luck. I kept driving, trying to figure out what to do. The road twisted and turned, and every time I thought I might have lost them, I'd see those damn headlights pop up behind me. Finally, I saw a sign for a small town, Tabernacle. It's this tiny place, barely on the map, but I knew there was a gas station there. I figured if I could make it to the gas station, maybe I'd be safe. There'd be people around, and maybe this creep would back off. I sped up, pushing my car as fast as I dared on those winding roads. The car behind me kept up, but they didn't try to pass. Just kept tailing me like they were waiting for something. I finally saw the gas station lights in the distance. I pulled in, skidding to a stop by the pumps. The car behind me slowed down but didn't pull in. They just sat there, idling at the entrance, headlights glaring at me. I didn't want to get out of my car, but I couldn't just sit there. I looked around, but the station was deserted. No other cars, no sign of the attendant. It was like a ghost town. I grabbed my phone again, desperate for a signal, but still nothing. I looked up, and that's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The car behind me, it didn't have a driver. I know how that sounds, and I can hardly believe it myself, but I swear on everything, the driver's seat was empty. I could see it clearly now that they were stopped under the lights. No one was in that car. I didn't know what to do. My brain was racing, trying to make sense of it. Maybe the driver was ducking down, hiding? But why? And how had they followed me so perfectly without seeing the road? My hands were shaking as I turned the key, ready to peel out of there. But then the car moved. It started rolling forward, slow at first, like it was just creeping toward me. I slammed on the gas and tore out of the station, not even caring where I was going, just needing to get away from that thing. I didn't stop driving until I was back on the highway, heading straight into the city. I don't think I even breathed until I saw the skyline in the distance. When I finally pulled into my apartment complex, I was shaking so bad I could barely get the key in the door. I didn't tell anyone at first. Who would believe me? A driverless car chasing me through the back roads of Jersey? I didn't even believe it. But I know what I saw. I've tried to rationalize it. I've taken that route 100 times. But I don't think I'll ever drive it at night again. And if I do, You can bet I'll be watching my rear view mirror the whole way.